Hi guys, and welcome back to Crafty Quilting Design. So good morning to you. It's about 11:30 here in London, and it's a beautiful winter's day. Well, I say winter, it's changing slightly. It's coming along better, because usually it's so dull and grey, but today it's a beautiful, lovely sunny day, and my sewing room is lovely and bright and just a perfect lighting for recording. So hey, I'm here today to do some recording. So there you go. So today I have this really wonderful idea. It's going to be a scrappy project, and I am actually going to be making a woven scrap quilt. Now usually when I do a scrappy quilt, I tend to do it very uniformly, and what I mean by that is that I don't particularly like my scrappy quilt to look scrappy, if that makes sense. I like them to be constructed in a way that it's not a scrappy quilt. So to someone looking at it, you know, they would think it's not a scrappy quilt. It's something that has been planned in that particular way to be made with the different types of fabric. So what I tend to do when I want to make a scrappy fabric, I tend to contrast all of the colors. And I know traditionally with a scrappy fabric, it's just anything goes really, and it's all jumbled up together. But I don't particularly like that style of quilting or scrap making into a quilt. I like it to be uniform, as I said. So for me, what I tend to do is I will most likely, when I'm finished with a project, I will sit there and make up an odd block, squares, rectangles, etc. Okay, but recently what I've started doing is cutting them down into particular sizes. So for example, depending on the amount of fabric that's left over, I may cut them into 2.5 sort of jelly roll strips basically. Okay, and that may apply to anything. All right, so for example, if I have made a quilt and I've cut the quilt off after sandwiching, so all the extra that I've cut off, I've trimmed off, then I would use that to a scrap. Okay, and then I will cut them down into my 2.5. So that's the sort of thing I tend to do. I also do a lot of 5-inch squares. I'll probably do 4-inch squares, 3-inch squares, those sort of things. Sizes I'll cut them down to. So it's easier then to compile it into a quilt. Well, today I'm going to be using my strips of fabric, okay, and I'm going to be fitting them together. And what I mean by that is just laying them on top of each other and sewing them down so that I can cut them open, and they will have 2 different pieces on each side. So then I will cut them into 2.5-inch square. All right, to do what I want to do them. So that's basically how I do my scrap quilting. It is just so that it's a bit more tidy. I can get an idea of what I want to do quite easily, and it just works for me in that particular way. I don't like the scrappy quilts that's traditional. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. It is just my way. I see myself as a modern quilter in the sense that I have different ideas, and the way I construct my quilt, sometimes it's on a whim of just something that I imagine out of my brain, and I just want to put it on paper and then try it out and, you know, make a sample block, and if it works up there, well then it's gonna go. So that's what I usually do. So in that sense, I like to contrast it in a way that it does not look like a scrappy quilt. And I've been told on many occasions that's not a scrappy quilt, when in reality it is. I have used scraps of fabrics, but I just use them in a sensible way that makes it not look scrappy. Okay, another person I've noticed that does this is Jordan Fabrics. When she does her scrap quilting, it never looks like a scrap quilting. It looks like she bought yardage, or she's used a jelly roll collection, for example, to make up the particular quilt. So I like doing it like that, and for me, I think it's a very creative way to use up the fabric, rather than cutting them into really tiny pieces and then sewing them together, and it just looks really odd. And don't get me wrong, as I said, that traditional method works. Some people like it. It's been done like that for years, and what some people might relate to as a real true scrappy quilt. Okay, but nevertheless, you know, I'm a 2022 girl. And it's not that I don't like that. I just don't have the urge for it. I don't see the creativity as much in it. It just looks like all the colors and everything just jumbled together, and it doesn't scream, "Hey, look at me!" It just screams to me, "Oh my God!" There's lots of confusion there, and for me, my brain needs organization. It compiles information in different corners, so then I can receive them and do something else with it. And I know that other people work like that. We're all not the same. So this is my method of a scrappy quilt, you know. So I hope you enjoy it. So as I said, it's going to be a woven scrappy quilt. So let me show you what I've done so far, and hopefully I will encourage you to try it with your scraps. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so what I have done, as I said, so I have all of my sort of bits of scraps on the table here, and they are in 2.5, and what I have done is taken whatever bits that I have that's already, so irregardless of the size of the fabric, I will cut them into 2.5. So as you can see, I have different lengths here. Okay, and again, so I've laid them atop each other, and I'm going to sew along there and then cut them into 2.5. So then I end up with two-sided. All right, so then I've done that here as well, and this one here as well, again different colors. Okay, and I've done this one again. This again came from this here. This was an extra piece from a quilt that I made ages ago, and I keep everything. All right, and this again, as you can see, it's just, so I've trimmed this off from my 2.5 from there. All right, now with this particular one here, what I intend to do, because I don't necessarily want the cream fabric, I really want this, so I'm going to fussy cut this so that I get the 2.5 with the yellow and the red. All right, so that is my plan so far. As I said, it's going to be woven. I'm going to be using black fabric to pull the whole thing together, but that's what I've done so far. Now once I have literally stitched along there, I'm going to cut them, and I'll show you what they look like once I've done that. Okay, so this is one here that I have done. It's okay, so there's two separate pieces of fabric, and I've cut them into 2.5 on the fold. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I do that. So to be honest, I haven't worked out the size of the quilt. As per normal, I just work on my creativity, and when I feel that I have achieved what I want to achieve, then I stop. Now this is a selection I've done already here, and I think these are 20. So we are making 20 of these in total here. Now I don't know if you could notice it, but for this one here, I accidentally swapped the fabric over. It's supposed to be on that side, but in my sense of, I am not going to change it. I'm not going to unpick it and leave it. It's probably about 4 that I've done like that, so I'm just going to leave it. And to be honest, it is just a lighter shade of the actual purple, so it's not a great deal for me that I feel that I have to take it out. And to be honest, I feel that it will be either lost within the whole look of the quilt top, or it may be spotted, and even if it is spotted, I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so that's another one there. This one I particularly like, very lovely. All right, so this is what we're aiming at. So this is what we're going to do. So once we have two separate pieces together, we are then going to sew them together in any sort of colors that you particularly like. It doesn't really matter at all. Okay, so I do have, let me just remove this here. I do have some Christmas fabric here, and I am not sure if I'm going to use this one just as yet. I will see what sort of the amount that I actually have. I'm aiming for about 40 of these strips here, and then I'll show you how I intend to compile the quilt. But again, this is scraps of fabric. This is not 2.5. I think this is about 3 inches in width, but I'm going to trim it down. But I do like it. Again, it's just spots of color. However, once I have done all of this, I'm just going to use a black for the woven, just to bring the whole thing together, so that it's just not so much colors all over. All right, so let me show you now how to actually sew this, cut this, and then we'll move on to compiling very shortly. All right, so let's get started, guys. So we're going to do, I've put all of my fabrics right sides together, and I'm just going to sew down. Now, when I did this, before I switched the camera on, I just zoomed through all of them. Now, I think what I have also done is to just iron it together, right sides together, so that it stays, and I can just pick them up and sew as I go along. So it zooms through quite easily. Just have everything ready to go, so you can just pick up and literally sew. And when you do it that way, you'll find that your sewing really comes to an end quite quickly, because you've just made real good use of the fabric and the sewing together quite easily. I'm just adjusting there just to make sure everything's nice and neat. Now, the best thing to do, as I said, is to get it all organized, get all the cuts done, layer the fabric on top of each other, give them a warm press, and then sit down and sew. Now, I've got an extra piece on here with a different color, but that's not a problem. I'm just going to continue the same way. Just make sure that lays on top nice and flat. Alright, so let's go cut them into 2.5-inch squares now. Just got my long strip. And I can keep going, but I'm going to cut this, see how much I have, and then I will continue again making some more. Alright, so let's get to trimming these off now from where we've chain pieced them, and then we're going to cut them into 2.5 so that we can get started. Now, one of the things I like to do is line them up. I usually press it here first, to be honest, but if I haven't done that, but I'm not going to worry about it, it's no big deal. And it's going to line it up on one of the grid lines there. So I'm only doing that so that I can cut quite a few at the same time. So you can see here whereby my 2.5 doesn't extend there. So when I do my cuts, I'm literally going to stop there because there's no point. So line that up again. And I'm choosing a line on the end there so that I can cut it all nice and straight. So once I cut it nice and straight, then I know that then I have an even cut throughout. I'll turn it on this way so I can use that, all of that in one go. Push that up there. I'm not being fussy, I'm just making sure that it's lined up straight on the line so that I can get myself an accurate cut. For me, cutting is important. You just need to take your time and do it properly so that you don't have any issues. I'm going to turn this one around so I can see where that stops there in terms of the actual, let me just move this up a bit. what I'm referring to here, I'm going to turn this right side up so I can see where the changes come in the cutting for that piece there. Right, I think that's fine. I'm just trying to make use of the board fully. Right, I'm using my smaller cutting mat rather than my bigger one. Nevertheless, it's already here and I'm not going to move it. Okay, here we go. So getting a nice straight edge there with all of them. It's amazing what a nice clean blade, sharp blade does. Makes life so much more easier. So again, just laying it now on that line for my half and just simply cut. So that's a half. This is my 2 now. So every cut is 2.5. So again, you get it done quite quickly. Now this here is a problem, so obviously I wouldn't use this one here because it's got that separation, so I'm just going to ignore that and just continue with my 2.5 squares. Right, so because it has the end there, that's no trash, no good. All right, so that's what you can do when it comes to the joining of another piece of fabric, just so that you know, it's just about saving time really. All right, so I went ahead now and ironed them all open, and I've separated them into the piles of the colors that I actually have. Now I can see I've got lots of blues ending, which is not a problem, okay, because I intend to dot it around the quilt. Now the reason why I've laid it out like this is because I now need to make them into long strips like this one here. And so what I'm going to do now is to just mix them together. So for example, I'm just going to be randomly picking them up, all right, and add them together like so. Now it's really down to you which variation of colors you match together. It doesn't really make any major difference at all, okay? So what I'm going to do now is just put them in their colors together, or their twin, so to speak, together, so that I know when I pick them up, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do it front sides together so that I know it's already set in the way in which I want to pick them up. So that's simply what I'm going to do now. And then once I've done that, then I'm going to then chain piece the whole thing and finish it up very quickly. So that is it basically. I mean, I do feel this is going to be a really beautiful quilt. I'm loving the colors at the moment that I've chosen, and I'm not making a big fuss about it. As I said, I'm simply just picking them up at random and putting them together so that I know which ones I actually have. I'm not going to, for example, something like this, I will try not to do that. And if I do that, that's fine. I haven't got a problem with having two similar colors on one, which is not an issue at all. Okay, but just bear in mind what you're doing, and yeah, that's it. So I'm going to stack these, get it all sorted, and then we can start sewing them together. Alright guys, so what I'm going to do now is simply start sewing them together, and I'm just going to lay them together really nice and flat. I'm not worried about it being snug because we're not nesting the seams, we're literally going to sew along there. Alright, so this is going to be very quick, just chain piece all of them. Alright guys, so this is what you should have when you finish with yours. So a beautiful garland of scrap fabrics. Alright, what we need to do now is simply just trim these apart, and once we've done that, we need to then iron this open so it's lovely and flat. So that's what we're aiming at, and then so we should have 2 stacks of these together. So I'm going to complete that now, and then I will come back and show you the next stages. Alright, so now that all of these have been pressed and ironed really nice and flat, it's time for me now to literally start building the block together. Now we've got a little bit more cuts to do, and then that is it. Now we need 1.5 inch of strips, and these are going to be used to actually show the woven within the quilt top. All right, so these are 1.5, and I'm using black. And you also need some 5-inch strips. All right, and this is what I have come up with. Now the easiest way to do this is to simply sew the strips down on one side and then cut to the required length that you need, which is what I've done here. Now the length that we need is 8.5. Why 8.5? Because that is what this measures as. If you wanted to make it bigger, by all means you can add another 2.5, and then you can probably cut it into 10. Okay, but I'm going with 8.5. So once you've sewn on the 2 ends of the black strip, we now need to add these onto it there. Excuse me. And this there now is entirely down to you as to what sort of colors you mix it with. It doesn't really matter. However, I am going to use different strips. So these are 5-inch in width and 8.5 in length. All right, and I'm just going to use different pieces or different colors. So I'm going to go in with some cream. Again, it is a scrap fabric, because remember I said fabric, sorry, it's a scrap quilt. Remember I said I'm using the black to bring the whole thing together. All right, very likely that they'll be, most likely I'm going with the colors of the blue and this sort of brown beige color here, with a few lights in between. Okay, now you can make this as big as you want. I'm working with 20 blocks, 20. I don't want to go too big, to be honest, but if you wanted to go more, you can. It's entirely down to you. All right, so that is what I'm going to do now. So I'm just going to lay the blocks together. So I'm going to make my long strip, and I think it's the most easiest, quickest way of doing it, because you know you got to find ways of making your quilt top more simplistic, and not just simplistic, but quick sewing that cuts out the longevity of the task. All right, so I'm just going to stitch it along there on both sides, and then I will cut them as a group in terms of the length, which is 8.5. Okay, and then I'm going to stack all of these by the sewing machine, and just randomly, what I would do is just randomly put one at the top and one at the bottom and just flip. Okay, so I'm going to have one stack to the bottom. This is exactly what I'm going to do as I sit next to the machine. I have my pile in the middle here, my pile of this block in the middle, and I'm simply going to take one, flip it over, take the other one, flip it over, and then sew. And that way you get sort of a random take rather than you sitting there and figuring out which one. To be honest, I wouldn't fuss too much about it, because all the colors are repeated anyway, so it's no big deal. But that's the method I will go in. All right, so whatever color variation that sits in the middle there for the block is what I'm going to work with. So all right guys, so I have done all the blocks together now, and I just wanted to show you what I've done so far. I've also added on some more blocks, because initially I was doing 20, and now I've added it on to 24 blocks in total. I've also added on a cream strip of fabric to the top of 12 of the actual block. So let me show you rather than explain. So this is what it looks like right now. Okay, it looks really lovely. I am loving it. For Scrappy quilt, it looks beautiful. It also has a lot of blues in it, and when I was laying it out, I did spend a lot of time making sure that there weren't too much of the same blocks together, for example. Now, as I said, there's a lot of blues, so I think that was my bit of a challenge there, was to ensuring that the blues were spaced out and they weren't too close to each other. All right, so if you're using similar colors, or if you're using colors that has more than enough or too much of one color, then by all means just make sure you check that, because yeah, I did, and without realizing, I actually added on the cream strips to a lot of the blues. Why? I really don't know, but I did that without actually thinking, but nevertheless it looks fine. Now you've been wondering, well, why did I add the cream strip to the top? Well, I'll tell you this. You need to ensure that the blocks are the same size. Now my blocks aren't. Okay, now if you're doing yours, you can simply make yours the same size all around, so squared. So for example, if it's a 10-inch squared blocks, then all the blocks must be squared. However, mine are not. Okay, so what I did in order to achieve my woven pattern, I made my blocks as normal, which is these ones here, and then I added a cream strip of fabric, which is 2.5, to make up the length of the block on this particular side here. And all I did was just simply turn it. So if I were to turn it this way, you would see, you will get a completely different pattern. Okay, but because I added the strip on, I was then able to achieve my woven pattern, is what I'm actually aiming at. Okay, now if you wanted to just use without making it scrappy, of course you'll most likely see the woven a lot more easily. You wouldn't have to, and I think this does show it up quite easily as well. But because it's a scrappy quilt and I wanted to bring the whole quilt up together using the black and the cream, because that's my theme of doing scrappy quilts. I like to sort of bring it together with one or two solid colors, and in this particular instance I'm using black and the cream, and I think it works. All right, so I am now going to stitch it together now, and to do this you simply just need to, I would start with a row. So I'm going to work with the longest row, so the 6, because I've done it 6 by 4, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you notice, I have a blue next to a blue here, and I'm going to have to try and figure out how to turn that around. And to be honest, I've got another one there, so I may just simply leave it, because as I said to you, I spent about 45 minutes trying to move it about, and with not much success, as you can tell. But it looks fine. It really does look fine. Okay, I'm not really too stressed about it. Well, I'm never stressed about it, but I'm not. So I'm going to sew it together using the length side of the quilt, sorry, of the blocks. Yeah, just stitch, sew, stitch, sew. Now what I would say though, for the last blocks along, you will need to trim the whole quilt top so that it's even. Okay, so that it's balanced, it's equated throughout, so your length and your width should be the same size. So obviously once you stitch it together, then you will trim the whole quilt top. The next thing I'm going to do now is to add on 2 borders for start, as I'm not completely finished yet. My first border is going to be black, okay, and I'm going to do 1 3/4, okay, of, or yeah, 1 3/4. I will stick with 1 3/4 of the black strip to go all the way around. I don't necessarily want to, you know what, I'm just going to take it to 2 inches. Forget the 3/4. I'll go a 2-inch border all the way around, and then I'm going to also do a piece border, and I'm going to do a piece border just like this one here. All right, and then I'm going to do my final border. So in reality there will be 3 borders to the quilt top. The last border is going to be just solid. They're going to be, when I say solid, it's not going to be a piece border. It's just one strip of color that's going to go around it. And I'm working with a paisley fabric for this one, for the final border. But of course I will show that to you. But I think it's coming along nicely. It looks really well. So I'm going to sew it together add on the first 2 borders, and then we will add on the last one and then get it all quilted. Alright guys, I went ahead and did all of the borders, and now I've also basted the quilt. But before I do that, I'm having a bit of a problem in terms of deciding which thread to actually choose. Now I've laid out a few selections on the quilt, and I know you cannot physically say to me, Karen, do this one. I wish you could, but you know. But I'm going to show you how I think about which thread to actually use, and how and I'm sure most of you would have done this anyway, okay, but I'm having problems deciding. So let me show you what I've laid them out, and you will actually see the quilt top as well with the borders. Okay, so let's have a look. So as you can see, I did a 3-piece border. So I did the black 2 inches, I did a piece border, and my final border. I didn't went ahead and use the paisley. I felt it was a little bit too much after looking at it, okay, and I just thought I'll keep to the cream at the end, and my final binding will be black. So I just thought I'll keep this color scheme going throughout the quilt, but it looks really nice. Now you can see I've laid out a few threads color throughout the quilt, so hopefully you can help me decide, or you can tell me in the box below which one you would have chosen. Now I have this Deco Bomb here, Wonderfill, and it's 80 weight and it's really fine, but I've laid it out there and you can't really see it much, so it disappears onto this one. Let me put it onto the brown, let me put it onto the blue, and but the thread is so fine, it's not really giving me what I really want. But it's a really lovely quilting thread, but I just felt that it's a little bit fine for this one. Okay, on this one here, it's purple, and I love that it's nice and glossy, and most of the threads are. And it looks, you can't see it much on the blue, and let me roll a bit more out. You can't really see it much on the blue here. It shows up on the lighter side of the actual fabric there. On this one, it disappears there. So I think I may necessarily reel that out. All right, yeah, I think I'll leave that one out. So definitely. The red looks really lovely on the cream. It shows up on the brown as well. On the patchwork, it also shows up, but I'm wondering if it's going to take over because it's such a bright red. Okay, so I'm a little bit, I like that. I like the fact that it shows up on everything. Not sure about it just yet. The blue, now the blues here, I've reeled it out, but it shows up on these ones, obviously because they're lighter, but it disappears in there. Now I don't mind that it disappears on there. I really would like it to show up on the cream. I really would, because I just want that bit to stand out. I'm not so worried about the other pieces of patchwork, but I do like that it blends into, it disappears into the blue here. As I said, it shows up on the patchwork, on the brown it shows up as well. So that's good. I'm happy with that. So that may be a contender, because I know it will show up on the cream really nicely. In fact, let me put it on a bigger piece of cream. Let me take the red out and put it on. Yeah, it will definitely show up there really nicely. Okay, so the red is a player. The blue so far I think is going to be number 1. The purple, no. I think, well, again, it shows up really nicely on the cream, but it, don't know. Not sure. All right. Now the gold, I do like the gold. The gold shows up really nicely, but my concern is that it may take over with all of the other colors, because I know it will show up on the blue, and it looks really nice there as well. In fact, I think it will show up everywhere. I think it will definitely show up everywhere. Yeah, I think it will. The gold's a good contender, actually. I think it will show up. Will it take over? Not sure. But it may bring us a subtle hint of elegance. You never know. The pink. Now, initially, I was going to go with the pink, if I have to be honest. I was going to go with the pink. It's a bit subtle, as you can see. It shows up on the patchwork really nicely. Okay. Yeah. The last one I have to decide about is the white. Now, I tend to use the white a lot. As you can see, it's much more used than the others. To me, the white will show up everywhere. I think it will even show up on the cream. Let me go in closer so you can have a good look at that. It even go up. It will show up, I think, on all of them. But I was just trying to get away from the usual. You know, sometimes you get into these rut of using the same things over and over, and I wanted to sort of get away from that. So I was trying or aiming to use a different color, but I do like the white, and because I think it wouldn't take over, it will fit in nicely using the white. So I think it's between either the white or the gold, or even the pink over there. I used pink for the last one. There's more colors, just not sure which to use. And if I go over here, you'll see that there's more colors there, just not sure which to use. But yeah, but that's what the quilt looks like. So I will decide, and I will take it from there, guys, and you will see which one. It's going to be a surprise for you as to which one I actually choose. All right, so let's get started on the quilting. Okay, so I'm going to do some quilting, and all I'm simply doing is some really large swirls so that I finish it quickly. Sometimes I do get like that, whereby I need to just do some smaller swirls, some bigger swirls, so that the process is completed quickly. So yeah, just see what I do. That's it, basically. So my stitches width is not that tiny. They're actually on 3.0, and I'm trying to maintain that. And even though my machine doesn't regulate the length of the stitch, I'm trying to sort of do that, because obviously with free motion quilting, your hands govern how stitches are actually made in terms of the width or the tightness of it. But at the same time, I'm trying to keep the same rhythm throughout. So the machine, I'm not pedaling too fast, and then I'm not going too slow either. I'm just trying to stay in that sort of middle speed with my hands, as well as with my with the pressure of the speed of the machine. So I'm just making big swells and then come back out and back up again. So anywhere where I feel that I've missed, I simply just go in and just echo the movement. Alrighty then guys, there's a beautiful surprise in for you now viewing this quilt. It has come together really nicely, and I know I say that all the time, but this is a beautiful quilt. This quilt measures 50 by 60 and I did it very quickly. The quilting did not take long at all. It came together very beautifully, and I also used the gold thread. Let's go in and have a closer look at my quilting. The gold thread showed up on the cream as I anticipated, definitely on the black, and on the blue it showed up really nicely as well. On the brown, I think it also worked very beautifully. Look at that there on the blue. The gold thread, I think, just give it that distinction of classiness. Very, very beautiful. Very pleased with the outcome actually. And all of the cream fabric, I did the feathers, and I wanted to stand out, so that's why I chose feathers for those. My quilting was large, and I did that purposely because I wanted to complete this very quickly. It only took me an hour and a half to quilt it, so it was really a quick project. The quilt measures 50 by 60. I did wishbones, and also ribbon candy on the 3 borders. This was a really beautiful project. I will definitely make this quilt again if I have to be honest. I wouldn't do it scrappy. I will do it with contrasting fabrics, and I will also make it bigger. I am in love with it. It's a really nice quilt actually. I really, really like it. Really, really like it. I think it's beautiful. I have really bonded with this quilt. Well, I bond on all of my quilts, but you know what I mean. This one's really beautiful. What do you think, guys? What color thread would you have used? Let me know in the description box down below. This one is definitely a thumbs up. I definitely think I deserve a thumbs up for this one. Really beautiful, guys. Really, really lovely. I'm really pleased with the gold thread. It didn't take over as I thought it would have. Absolutely gorgeous. Now on the back, you're going to be very surprised what I did. Look at that. I used black and gold. Doesn't it look fantastic? So, so pretty. So pretty. I am so pleased with this quilt. So pleased with it. Really, really lovely outcome. It's great when you use a solid color in the black. It gives you 2 quilts in one. That's the other side. Look at the feathers coming through there. Just so lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed the process of making this. Really, really did. This was a really fun project for me. And as I said, if I were to do it again, I will definitely make it bigger. I mean, I didn't have much time was to complete the whole project. I'm just moving it about. It's really lovely and light. You know, it just flops everywhere so beautifully. It holds its shape, very well. Absolutely gorgeous, guys. Really, really beautiful. Guys, I think definitely a thumbs up for this one. Definitely a thumbs up and a shared video. Share it with your friends and family. Let them know what fantastic quilting and quilt making that happens on my channel. Beautiful. Can you believe this is a scrappy quilt? It just shows you what you can do with your scraps as long as you take the time to plan it and be creative. So don't throw your scraps away. Make something from them. So guys, I'm going to love you and leave you now. Don't forget to like and subscribe, hit that bell. Please share the video out because it helps the channel a lot. Give me a thumbs up. You know, when I love seeing your thumbs up. You know, it makes me feel like, yay, they're happy with this. You know, I am approaching 2,000 subscribers and I'd love to get there by the end of March. So help me to achieve that. Please help me to achieve that. Share the video with your friends. Let them know what great stuff is happening here. And as I said, I think I definitely deserve a thumbs up because this is a beautiful quilt, guys. So once again, bye for now. Happy quilting and see you in the next one, guys. Take care.